Welcome to Mystery Manor Tales. I'm your host, Evelyn Whitaker. Settle in with a cup of tea, dear listeners, as we embark on a journey into the fog-shrouded world of intrigue and deduction. Tonight, we present an original tale in the timeless style of Agatha Christie, Hercule Poirot and the Whispered Name Truth. This is a long, immersive story, perfect for those cozy evenings or long drives. If you're new here, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a whisper of mystery. Chapter 1: The Invitation to Shadowbrook Manor. The autumn of 1925 had draped London in a mantle of pearl grey mist. Gas lamps glowed like hesitant moons along the embankment. Motor cars hissed past in sprays of silver. And somewhere in the hush between the chimes of Big Ben, Hercule Poirot allowed himself the rare indulgence of idleness. He sat in his Baker Street flat, number 56B to be precise, his small feet planted upon a footstool upholstered in bottle green velvet. A cup of thick, sweet chocolate chord rested on the table beside him, its aroma curling upward in fragrant question marks. On his lap lay an open copy of Le Figaro, but his eyes were not upon the print. They were fixed instead upon the ceiling rose, where a single spider had begun an ambitious web. Poirot watched the creature with the benign fascination of a man who believes order may be found even in the architecture of insects. "Tiens," he murmured to the empty room, "even the spider knows the value of symmetry." The symmetry was interrupted by a sharp rap at the door. Poirot's valet, George, entered with the measured tread of a man who had once been a sergeant major and had never quite relinquished the habit. "A telegram, sir, marked urgent." Poirot accepted the orange envelope with delicate fingers, slid it open, and read aloud in his precise, lightly accented English. Poirot's moustaches twitched, an almost imperceptible quiver of anticipation. "Shadowbrook Manor," he repeated, tasting the name as one might a vintage wine. A name that suggests both refuge and concealment. Très intéressant. George cleared his throat. "Shall I pack for a long stay, sir?" "Pack for every eventuality, mon ami. The English aristocracy, when it summons Hercule Poirot, rarely does so for an afternoon of croquet." At Paddington Station, the 3:15 was already exhaling steam like an impatient dragon. Poirot, immaculate in a charcoal overcoat and grey spats, paused on the platform to observe his fellow travellers. A portly clergyman clutched a parcel tied with string. Two giggling flappers in cloche hats compared lipstick shades. A thin man with a military bearing scanned the crowds as though expecting ambush. Poirot filed each face away in the card index of his mind. Captain Arthur Hastings, late of the Western Front, current enthusiast of golf and straightforward solutions, arrived breathless, swinging a Gladstone bag. "Poirot, got your wire." Dashed mysterious. "What? Family crisis. Sounds like one of your locked room conundrums already." "Patience, Hastings," Poirot replied, stepping aboard the first-class carriage. "First, we must travel through the countryside of the heart before we arrive at the countryside of the body." The train gathered speed, rattling westward through suburbs that dissolved into water meadows and hedgerows, ablaze with turning beach. Hastings, ever the Englishman abroad in his own country, attempted small talk about the test match. Poirot, however, was occupied with the telegram. He turned it over, studying the creases, the pressure of the telegraphist's hand, the faint smudge of ink where a thumb had rested. Clues, he believed, began long before the crime. Shadowbrook Manor revealed itself at the end of a mile-long avenue of limes, their leaves drifting like golden confetti across the gravel. The house was Elizabethan at its core. mullioned windows, twisted chimneys, a moat now dry and planted with roses, but successive generations had added wings, turrets, and a Victorian conservatory that glinted like a crystal box at the southern end. To Poirot, it suggested a palimpsest, layer upon layer of family history, each stratum hiding secrets beneath the next. A liveried footman, tall, pale, with the stillness of a waxwork, relieved them of their luggage. In the entrance hall, a fire roared beneath a carved mantel depicting the labors of Hercules. Poirot permitted himself a private smile at the coincidence. Lady Eleanor Hargrove awaited them beneath a chandelier that dripped light like melting icicles. She was perhaps 55, tall, with the posture of a woman who had never stooped to pick up anything less dignified than a coronet. Her gown was black silk, relieved only by a single strand of pearls and the flash of a diamond brooch shaped like a fox's mask. Grief, Poirot noted at once, had not softened her. Rather, it had honed her features to a blade. Monsieur Poirot. Her voice was low, cultivated, with the faintest tremor of exhaustion. You are punctual. I am grateful. Madame, punctuality is the politeness of princes and of detectives. He bowed over her hand. Allow me to present my friend, Captain Hastings. Hastings, flushing like a schoolboy, managed a creditable bow. Lady Eleanor did not waste time on pleasantries. Walk with me. She led them through a corridor paneled in dark oak, past ancestral portraits, whose eyes seemed to follow with the weary resignation of the long dead. At the far end, a door opened onto the long gallery, a cavernous space lined with suits of armor, tapestries of hunting scenes, and a grand piano that looked as though it had not been played since the Boer War. Here, assembled as though for a tableau vivant, stood the 6 souls who would soon become suspects in a drama none of them yet suspected. Sir Reginald Hargrove lounged against the piano, a brandy balloon cradled in one manicured hand. He was Lady Eleanor's brother-in-law, 62, with the ruddy complexion of a man who believed fresh air was best taken with a gun in one hand and a hip flask in the other. His tweeds were Savile Row, but the elbows were patched. An affectation, Poirot decided, rather than necessity. Sir Reginald's eyes were small, bright, and perpetually calculating, like a fox assessing the distance to the henhouse. Miss Victoria Langford perched on a chaise longue, one silk-stockinged leg crossed over the other, a cigarette in an ebony holder, sending lazy spirals toward the hammer-beam ceiling. She was 24, with bobbed hair the color of midnight, and eyes that held the reckless glitter of the bright young things. A diamond clip shaped like a dagger glinted at her throat. Poirot noted it with interest. Dr. Elias Thorne stood apart, near a window overlooking the rose garden, mid-40s, lean, with the scholar's stoop, and wire-rimmed spectacles that magnified eyes the pale blue of winter skies. His hands, Poirot observed, were never still, fingering a fountain pen, adjusting a cuff, betraying the nervous energy of a man who lived among microscopes and morphine. Mrs. Beatrice Caldwell, the housekeeper, hovered at the periphery like a benevolent ghost. 57, iron-gray hair scraped into a bun, black bombazine rustling with every movement, her keys, symbol of her dominion over the manor's 1,000 locks, jangled softly at her waist. Her gaze, when it rested on Lady Eleanor, held something fiercer than loyalty. Colonel Marcus Fitzroy had stationed himself before the fireplace, legs apart, hands clasped behind his back in parade ground stance. 65, ramrod straight despite the limp acquired at Ypres. His moustache was magnificent, his eyes the faded blue of regimental flags, A scar ran from his left temple to the corner of his mouth, a souvenir, Hastings would later learn, of a bayonet charge. Finally, Mr. Geoffrey Hargrove, Lady Eleanor's only child, leaned against a suit of armor with the studied nonchalance of a man who had never quite grown into his inheritance. 32, handsome in the dissipated style of the younger son, with his mother's cheekbones and his father's weakness for roulette wheels. His tie was askew, his eyes bloodshot. The scent of whiskey clung to him like a second skin. Lady Eleanor closed the gallery doors with a soft click that sounded to Poirot's attuned ear like the cocking of a pistol. "You are all here," she began, "because I have decided to rewrite my late husband's will. Tomorrow, the solicitors arrive. Tonight, I wished Monsieur Poirot to meet the beneficiaries." A ripple passed through the room, barely perceptible, yet Poirot felt it as clearly as a gust across still water. Sir Reginald's glass paused halfway to his lips. "Eleanor, this is hardly the time." "The time," she cut in, "is precisely now. For too long, this family has lived on whispers and half-truths. Tomorrow, the truth will be spoken aloud." Victoria exhaled a perfect smoke ring. "Darling aunt, do be careful. Truth is such a sharp instrument. One might cut oneself." Dr. Thorne's pen clicked shut. Mrs. Caldwell's keys gave a nervous jingle. Colonel Fitzroy's scar seemed to whiten. Only Geoffrey laughed, a short, brittle sound that died against the tapestries. Poirot stepped forward, his voice smooth as creme brulee. "Madame, perhaps you will enlighten me. What is this truth that casts such long shadows?" Lady Eleanor's gaze swept the room, lingering on each face. 25 years ago, my husband kept a secret. A name was whispered in this house, a name that should have remained buried. That name has returned, like a ghost demanding justice. I intend to give it voice. She reached into her reticule and drew forth a single sheet of heavy cream paper, folded once. "This," she said, "is the key. Tomorrow it will be read. Tonight, I ask only that you reflect upon your consciences." With that, she turned on her heel and left the gallery. The doors closed behind her with the finality of a coffin lid. Chapter 2. The crime discovered. The library door hung drunkenly on its splintered hinges, exhaling the copper-sweet scent of fresh blood. A single lamp still burned on the desk, its pool of gold illuminating the tableau. Lady Eleanor Hargrove, black silk, now scarlet. The dagger, Hargrove crest, glinting, buried to its hilt between her ribs. Her right hand clutched the folded cream paper she had brandished in the long gallery. Her left lay open, palm up, as though she had been reaching for something just beyond the edge of life. Poirot stepped inside first, his patent leather shoes silent on the Persian rug. He did not touch the body yet. Instead, he inhaled, cataloguing the air, beeswax, coal smoke, the faint metallic tang of blood, and beneath it all, a ghost of jasmine, Lady Eleanor's signature perfume. Hastings hovered at the threshold, face drained of color. Good God, Poirot, she was alive not 20 minutes ago. Precisely, mon ami, 20 minutes in which the impossible became fact. Dr. Elias Thorne knelt beside the desk, medical bag open, stethoscope dangling like a hanged man. His fingers trembled as he lifted Lady Eleanor's wrist, then pressed 2 fingers to the hollow of her throat. Pulse absent. Rigor has not begun. Death within the last quarter hour. Quarter hour. Sir Reginald Hargrove shouldered past Hastings, robe gaping to reveal striped pajamas. Impossible. The door was bolted from within. I heard the bolt myself when she retired. Colonel Fitzroy limped forward, poker still gripped in one gnarled hand. Heard it too, solid as a coffin lid. Mrs. Caldwell's keys gave a nervous shiver. My lady always bolted the library when she worked late, said it kept the ghosts out. Her voice cracked on the final word. Victoria Langford appeared in the doorway. Otto Orton, silk kimono clutched about her, cigarette forgotten between her fingers. Aunt Eleanor. Dead. The ash lengthened, fell, scattered across the rug like grey snow. Geoffrey Hargrove staggered in last, reeking of whiskey and terror. Mother? He lurched toward the desk, but Poirot intercepted him with a gentle yet immovable hand. No, monsieur. The scene must remain intact. Inspector Japp arrived 10 minutes later, summoned by frantic telephone from the village constable, his bowler hat dripping rain, his moustache bristling with official indignation. Poirot, you Belgian busybody, what the devil are you doing in my murder? Your murder, Inspector? I think not. This is my puzzle. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Observe. He began his circuit of the room, a small, neat figure against the towering shelves. The library was a fortress. One door, bolted inside until forced, 3 tall windows latched from within, no fire escape, no dumbwaiter, no chimney wide enough for a child. The rug bore no footprints, save those of the intruders. The desk faced the door. The dagger had entered from the front, straight, downward, delivered by someone standing over her. Japp scratched his head. Locked room. Classic. But the bolt was thrown from the inside, Poirot finished, and the key remains in the lock. No duplicate has ever existed. Mrs. Caldwell? The housekeeper nodded, pale. Only one key. My lady kept it on a ribbon at her throat. She pointed to the severed ribbon, the key still in the lock. Hastings whispered, then the murderer was in the room with her, and vanished. Or never entered at all, Poirot murmured. He knelt beside the body. Lady Eleanor's lips were parted. A faint crimson bubble had dried at the corner. Poirot leaned close, ear almost touching her mouth. Veritas, he repeated softly. Truth. But whose? On the blotter lay the cream paper, now spotted with blood. Poirot lifted it with tweezers. The ink was fresh, the handwriting Lady Eleanor's own. The name whispered in this house 25 years ago must be spoken aloud. Veritas is the child of... The sentence ended in a smear of blood, where the dagger had pinned the page to her heart. Dr. Thorne's spectacles flashed as he examined the wound. Single thrust, downward angle, severed the aorta. Death in moments. The dagger is from the armory. Hargrove crest, 17th century. Razor sharp. Poirot's gaze swept the room. A crystal decanter of whiskey stood on a side table, half empty. 2 glasses, one with lipstick the color of Victoria's. A silver cigarette box lay open, 3 stubs, all Turkish, gold-tipped. The fire had burned low. Ash revealed the corner of a photograph, curling black. Poirot retrieved it with tongs. A young man in academic robes, face half consumed by flame. Curious, he said. Someone wished to erase a memory. Japp barked orders. Constable, seal the room. No one leaves. The house. Alibis, now. The suspects gathered in the long gallery, a disheveled parliament of fear and suspicion. Sir Reginald. In my room since 10:30. Reading the Times. Ask my valet. Victoria. Dancing alone. Gramophone still warm if you care to check. Dr. Thorne. Billiard room. Practicing shots. Alone. Mrs. Caldwell. Kitchen. Preparing tomorrow's menus. Cook will confirm. Colonel Fitzroy. Terrace. Smoking a cigar. Saw Geoffrey walking the rose garden at 11:40. Geoffrey. Needed air. Walked the lower path. Returned just before the scream. Poirot listened. head tilted like a bird. All so convenient. Yet the library door was bolted at 11:05. Lady Eleanor was alive at 11:15. Mrs. Caldwell brought her cocoa. The scream came at midnight. 55 minutes unaccounted for. He returned to the library, alone. Kneeling, he examined the bolt mechanism. Brass, old, stiff with disuse. Yet the scratches were fresh. Someone had forced it recently. He measured the dagger's angle. 5 feet 8 inches, delivered by a right-handed person of average height. On the floor, beneath the desk, lay a single pearl earring, Lady Eleanor's, but the clasp was broken, and caught in the rug's fringe, a thread of midnight blue silk. Poirot pocketed both. At 2 a.m., the house slept uneasily. Poirot stood at his window, watching moonlight glaze the rose garden. Somewhere below, a door closed softly. Footsteps on gravel, then silence. He turned to Hastings, who had dozed in an armchair. The crime is discovered, mon ami. But the discovery has only begun. Tomorrow, we search for the whisper that became a scream. Chapter 3. Investigation begins. The library windows faced east. The first smear of pewter light revealed a room that looked, in Poirot's phrase, violet, violated. Blood had soaked into the blotter and dried to a lacquer crust. The dagger, still upright in Lady Eleanor's breast, caught the pale glow like a macabre candlestick. Constable Briggs, a gangling youth with a notebook too large for his hands, stood guard at the door. Inspector Japp prowled the shelves, muttering about fancy foreign tricks. Poirot ignored them both. He had donned cotton gloves and now moved with the reverence of a priest at an altar. First, the body. Dr. Thorne had returned, washed and composed, to assist the police surgeon. Together, they eased the dagger free. It came with a soft, reluctant sigh. Instantaneous, Thorne confirmed, heart pierced clean through. Poirot noted the angle again. 5 feet 8, right-handed, downward. He measured Lady Eleanor's height, 5 feet 6 in her stockings. The killer had stood over her, perhaps as she rose from the chair. Next, the desk. The cream paper, now bagged as evidence, had been photographed. Poirot studied the negative Japp thrust at him. The name whispered in this house 25 years ago must be spoken aloud. Veritas is the child of... The sentence ended in a crimson comma. Veritas, Poirot repeated, Latin, truth, but also a Christian name, rare yet possible. We seek a child born in secret. He turned to the scattered correspondence. Bills, charitable appeals, a letter from Coutts Bank confirming a transfer of $10,000 to an account in Zurich, dated 3 days prior. Curious, he murmured. Lady Eleanor was moving money. To whom? The fireplace yielded more, the half-burnt photograph. Poirot teased the fragments onto a silver tray. A young man, early 20s, mortarboard askew, eyes alight with triumph. The backdrop, Oxford, Magdalen College. The surviving corner bore an inscription in faded ink, to E.H. Faux. V, Poirot said. Veritas, or Victoria, or another? Japp snorted. Or a red herring tossed by the killer to muddy the waters. Perhaps, but herrings do not burn themselves. At 6 o'clock, the household was summoned to the morning room. Walls the color of clotted cream, portraits of Hargrove forebears glaring down in disapproval. A mahogany table had been laid with coffee, toast, and the grim necessity of interrogation. Poirot took the head, Japp the foot. Hastings, notebook poised, sat between. Sir Reginald arrived first, freshly shaved, but eyes bloodshot. Sleep? Poirot inquired politely. None. My sister-in-law murdered under my roof. Hardly conducive to repose. He confirmed his alibi. Valet had left him at 10:30 with the Times. He had read until midnight, then retired. The valet corroborated. Poirot produced the midnight blue silk thread. From your dressing gown, Sir Reginald. The baronet blanched. Possibly. The hem phrase. Convenient. Victoria drifted in, wearing a charcoal jumper and pearls, cigarette already lit. Dancing alone, mademoiselle. Terribly modern, isn't it? The gramophone was still spinning when the scream came. The machine was indeed warm. The record, Ain't We Got Fun, scratched to a halt at 11:57. Poirot held up the pearl earring. Yours? Victoria touched her lobes, both occupied. Auntie's, she had a dozen pairs. Yet this clasp is broken, as though torn in a struggle. Dr. Thorne entered quietly, medical bag in hand. Billiards until when? 11:45. I packed the cues myself. The billiard room showed chalk dust on the baize. One cue left at an angle, suggesting a missed shot. Poirot's gaze lingered on Thorne's shoes, polished, but the left sole carried a fleck of dried mud. The terrace path is gravel, Doctor. Where did you walk? Thorne flushed. I stepped outside for air. Briefly. Mrs. Caldwell brought cocoa on a silver tray, hands steady now. Cook confirms you were in the kitchen until 11:15? Yes, sir. Then I took her ladyship's tray to the library door. She opened, took it, thanked me, rebolted. Poirot noted the faint tremor in her left eyelid when she spoke the word bolted. Colonel Fitzroy marched in, ramrod despite the limp. Cigar on the terrace. Saw young Geoffrey in the rose garden. 11:40 exactly. Moon was bright. Poirot produced a cigar butt from his pocket, still fragrant. Yours? Fitzroy nodded. Corona. Only I smoke them here. Geoffrey arrived last, unshaven, eyes swollen. Walked the lower path to clear my head. Returned at the scream. His shoes, oxblood brogues, bore fresh scratches and a smear of what looked like rose-thorn blood. Argument with your mother earlier? Poirot asked softly. Geoffrey flinched. She refused another loan. I begged. She laughed, said the money was for Veritas. I thought she'd gone mad. Chapter 4. Clues and Red Herrings. Poirot stood in the center of the library, arms folded, eyes half closed, as though listening to music only he could hear. Sunlight now streamed through the windows, laying bars of gold across the rug. The blood had darkened to rust. The dagger lay on a silver tray, wrapped in cotton wool. Constable Briggs guarded the door like a nervous terrier. Inspector Japp had gone to telephone London for fingerprint powder. Hastings hovered with notebook and pencil, eager as a gundog. Poirot opened his eyes. Maintenant, we separate the wheat from the chaff. He began with the desk drawers. Left, household accounts, a ledger showing $5,000, paid quarterly, to VT Geneva. Right, a sealed envelope, addressed in Lady Eleanor's hand, to the Reverend Mother, Convent of St. Agnes Bruges. Inside, a single sheet. Forgive me. The child lives. Protect him until the truth is safe. Poirot's moustache twitched. A child, a convent, a secret 25 years in the making. Next, the safe, concealed behind a false panel of the Fairy Queen. Combination 1900, the year of Lord Hargrove's matriculation at Oxford. Inside, a birth certificate, edges yellowed. Name, Veritas Thorne. Date, 14th of March 1900. Mother, Eleanor Hargrove, née Langley. Father, unknown. Hastings whistled. Thorne, as in Dr. Elias Thorne. Precisely, mon ami. Our good doctor is Lady Eleanor's son. Illegitimate, hidden, educated abroad. Motive enough for murder, non? Poirot locked the safe, pocketed the key. But motive is not proof. We require the how. The armory yielded the dagger's twin, empty slot in a velvet-lined case. Footprints on the parquet, a faint scuff of garden soil, size 9, narrow heel. Poirot compared soles in the corridor. Geoffrey was here, Hastings said triumphantly. Or his shoe was, Poirot corrected. Shoes, like alibis, may be borrowed. The rose garden. The severed stem lay where Poirot had seen it. Rosa gallica, deep crimson, thorns, vicious. Beneath the window, the soil was undisturbed, yet a ladder had stood in the adjoining herb bed. 2 neat indentations, dew still pooled. Poirot measured. Ladder height 12 feet, windowsill 11 feet 6 inches. Someone climbed down, he murmured, not up, curious. In the herb bed, a scrap of midnight blue silk, torn larger than the thread from chapter 2. Poirot held it to the light, same weave as Sir Reginald's dressing gown, the billiard room. Cue chalk on the baize, but the balls were racked, no game played. On the scoreboard, a single chalk mark, 447. Victoria's initial, or Veritas, the long gallery gramophone. Poirot lifted the lid. Beneath the dance record, a wax cylinder, unmarked. He wound the handle. A woman's voice, faint but unmistakable, Lady Eleanor's. Help. Murder. The scream that had brought them running, recorded hours earlier. Hastings paled. The killer planned the distraction. But whose voice imitated the scream at midnight? The cylinder ends at 11:57. Interviews. Second round, morning room, 11 a.m. Dr. Thorne Poirot laid the birth certificate on the table. Thorne's face drained to parchment. She was my mother. Sent me away at birth. Paid for my education. I came back last year. Blackmailed her for recognition. Yet you inherit nothing? Only if the will was changed. She promised, then reneged. His shoes. The mud now brushed away, but the left sole carried a faint rose-thorn scratch. Sir Reginald, the silk scrap. Tore on a nail weeks ago, anyone could have taken it. Poirot produced a second scrap. From the library rug. Identical weave, fresh tear. Reginald's eyes flickered. I lent the gown to Geoffrey. He was cold. Victoria, the gramophone cylinder. I never touched the thing. It's Geoffrey's toy. But her fingers bore faint wax residue, cylinder dust. Geoffrey the nail in his shoe. Caught it on the rose trellis. I went to the library window at 11:50. Saw Mother through the gap in the curtains, writing. She looked up, smiled, waved me away. I left. Poirot. Yet the curtains were drawn tight when we entered. Geoffrey flushed. I must be mistaken. Mrs. Caldwell Poirot noticed her keys. One missing. The duplicate library key kept in the housekeeper's office. Taken yesterday, she admitted. I thought. Mislaid. The office drawer, pry marks, fresh. Colonel Fitzroy. The ladder indentations. I keep a ladder in the potting shed. Anyone could borrow it. Poirot found the ladder. Returned, but the rungs carried faint blood smears, diluted by dew. Yet the locked room remained inviolate, except for the whalebone trick. Poirot tested it again. The bolt slid home from outside, but the whalebone snapped under pressure. The fragment in the corridor was intact. Therefore, 2 tools or 2 attempts. At noon, the fingerprint powder arrived. The bloody prints on the window, 4 fingers, thumb, right hand, height 5 feet 8. Poirot compared. None matched exactly. But the thumb smudge was elongated. Glove. Poirot smiled. The killer wore gloves and left a print in blood. Deliberate misdirection. He turned to Hastings. The clues are plentiful, mon ami, but the red herrings swim in schools. We must net the shark. Chapter 5. Complications and Twists. Poirot stood alone in the library, the door closed, the silence absolute. He had dismissed Jap, Hastings, even the constable. Sunlight lay in slanted bars across the rug. Dust motes drifted like lazy suspects. Poirot's eyes were fixed on the bolt, brass, scarred, innocent. He slid the whalebone fragment along the gap once more. Click. Then he did something no one had yet attempted. He unbolted the door from the inside and stepped through, closing it behind him. From the corridor, he inserted the whalebone again. It caught, then snapped. He examined the broken end. A hairline crack had been there all along. The fragment found earlier was not from this attempt. Therefore, the killer had practiced twice. Poirot pocketed the fresh break and returned inside. On the desk, he laid out the morning's harvest. He arranged them like tarot cards. Trop de pièces, he murmured. Someone is over-directing the drama. Victoria Langford sat among the orchids, a cigarette trembling between gloved fingers. Poirot entered without ceremony. Mademoiselle, the cylinder. Your fingerprints are on the wax. She laughed, brittle. I handle records daily. But this one was recorded yesterday, in this house. Your voice, layered beneath Lady Eleanor's whispering veritas 3 times. Victoria crushed the cigarette. Geoffrey asked me to, said it was a prank. Prank or rehearsal? Dr. Thorne chalked a cue with mechanical precision. Poirot produced the Geneva ledger. $5,000 quarterly since 1918. Your tuition, doctor? Thorne's knuckles whitened. Mother's guilt money. And the $10,000 transferred last week to your account? Silence. You confronted her at 11:30. She refused recognition. You stabbed her, then. No? Thorne's voice cracked. I was in the billiard room, alone. Poirot laid the ladder blood report beside the cue. Type go, yours is AB. Thorne stared. Then whose? Colonel Fitzroy polished a Webley revolver with military calm. The ladder, Colonel. Your shed. Your war wound, right leg. Yet the footprints beneath the window are left-legged. Fitzroy's scar twitched. I lent the ladder to Geoffrey. Rose pruning. Poirot produced the nail from Geoffrey's shoe. This nail matches the armory floor. Geoffrey was inside the library. Fitzroy's eyes narrowed. The boy's a fool, but not a killer. Mrs. Caldwell stirred soup, the aroma of thyme thick. The duplicate key, madame, pry marks on your drawer. She did not flinch. I noticed at breakfast. Thought a maid. Poirot opened the pantry door. On a shelf, a tin of rat poison, arsenic, half empty. Lady Eleanor's cocoa last night. You prepared it. Mrs. Caldwell's spoon clattered. She took one sip and set it aside. I tasted them. Dregs myself. No bitterness. Poirot sniffed the cup, still in evidence. Faint almond, cyanide, not arsenic. 2 poisons, 2 killers. Geoffrey Hargrove sat on a bench, head in hands. Poirot sat beside him. You entered the library, monsieur. The nail proves it. Geoffrey's voice was raw. I went to beg again. The door was ajar. Mother was at the desk, writing. She looked up, smiled, said, Later, darling. I left. The door closed behind me. I swear I heard the bolt. Poirot's eyes gleamed. You closed it? No, I mean it closed itself. Spring bolt. Poirot leapt up. Mon Dieu. The door, self-latching. Back in the library, Poirot examined the door frame. A discreet brass plate, spring-loaded bolt, activated by closure. If the door was pulled shut from inside, the bolt engaged automatically. The killer had never needed the whalebone trick. The door was ajar when Geoffrey left. Lady Eleanor rose to close it, turning her back. The murderer, already inside, struck as the bolt clicked home. Poirot gathered them all. New facts, he announced. Victoria laughed nervously. Anyone could have taken my paper. Poirot produced a second sheet. From her bedroom wastebasket, same watermark, same ink smudge. You forged the note, mademoiselle, to cast doubt on suicide. She paled. I I wanted to protect Geoffrey. He's weak. Sir Reginald examined the dagger case. Empty slot. Yes, but I keep a spare in my study. Poirot opened the study drawer. The spare dagger, clean. But the blood on the ladder was smeared with your cufflink, Sir Reginald. Engraved R.H. Reginald blustered. I lost it weeks ago. Poirot held up the cufflink, found in the herb bed, blood-flecked. Poirot reopened it. The birth certificate was gone. In its place, a fresh note typed, "Stop digging, little man. Veritas will bury you." Hastings gasped. The killer was here, today. Poirot's eyes narrowed, or never left. A pane was cracked, new, spider-webbed. Outside, footprints in the soft earth, size 9, left-legged, leading away from the house. The trail ended at the moat bridge, then vanished. A motor car had waited, tire tracks in the mud, Dunlop, wide tread. Poirot's face was grim. The past is being erased, piece by piece. On the floor beside him, a half-eaten apple, cyanide crystals glittering in the bite. Poirot knelt, sniffed. The same almond scent as the cocoa cup. Thorne gasped. The apple was on my desk, with a note from Mother. His pulse fluttered, then stopped. 2 bodies in one day. The House of Secrets was becoming a mausoleum. Poirot stood over the doctor's body, eyes blazing. Assez. The killer grows bold, too bold. The little grey cells, they demand order. He turned to the stunned assembly. Tonight we set a trap. The murderer will return, for the safe, for the truth, for Veritas. He smiled without warmth. And Hercule Poirot will be waiting. Chapter 6. The Revelation. Poirot had dismissed the household at 10. "Retire," he commanded. "Lock your doors. Touch nothing." Only Hastings remained, posted in the long gallery with a whistle and a revolver he prayed not to use. The library was dark, save for the fire's embers, and a single green-shaded lamp on the desk. Poirot sat in Lady Eleanor's chair, motionless, a small black figure against the crimson glow. On the blotter lay the bait, the original birth certificate, returned at dusk by an anonymous hand, slipped under the front door. Beside it, the forged suicide note, the whalebone fragment, the midnight blue silk, the apple core now wrapped in gauze. Poirot's eyes never left the door. 11:50. The grandfather clock in the hall began its solemn chime. 11 strokes. 12. Silence. A floorboard sighed in the corridor. Poirot's hand slid to the pocket where his own revolver nestled. The door handle turned, slowly, deliberately. The spring bolt was not engaged. Poirot had disabled it with a matchstick. The door opened 6 inches. A gloved hand appeared, holding a candle shielded by a silver snuffer. The intruder stepped inside. Mrs. Beatrice Caldwell, bombazine rustling, keys muted with tape, face pale but composed. She closed the door with her heel. The bolt clicked home from the inside. Poirot did not move. Mrs. Caldwell crossed to the safe, produced the duplicate key, retrieved from her apron pocket, and opened it in one fluid motion. She removed a second document, yellowed, sealed with red wax, and slipped it into her bodice. Only then did she turn. Poirot rose. "Bonsoir, madame. You are punctual." Mrs. Caldwell did not startle. "Monsieur Poirot, I might say the same." Her voice was steady, almost amused. She placed the candle on the desk. The flame doubled her shadow against the books. Poirot gestured to the chair opposite. "Sit. We have much to discuss." She obeyed, folding her hands like a penitent. Poirot resumed his seat. Between them, the birth certificate, the apple, the dagger, clean now, but still accusing. Begin with the child, Poirot said softly. Veritas Thorn, your son? Mrs. Caldwell's eyes glistened. My son. Eleanor carried him, but I bore the shame. Lord Hargrove's fancy, whispered promises, then exile to a Scottish croft. Eleanor, Baron, claimed the boy as hers to secure the succession, paid me to vanish. I returned as housekeeper, watched my own flesh inherit nothing. Poirot nodded. And Dr. Elias Thorne? Eleanor's second secret. Another affair, another payment. She feared I would expose them both. Poirot lifted the forged suicide note. Your handwriting, madame. The ink. Your kitchen ledger. I wrote it before the murder. Insurance. If she changed the will in my favor, it stayed hidden. If not, she shrugged. A push towards suicide. Poirot produced the midnight blue silk. Sir Reginald's gown, stolen, torn, planted. To implicate him, he embezzled the estate for years. I had the ledgers. The ladder, the blood, gardeners. I cut his hand myself, paid him to prune roses at dusk. The blood distracted. The gramophone cylinder. Victoria's voice, my recording. Geoffrey's idea. Drunk, he thought it a joke. I used it. The whalebone. From my corset. Practiced the trick for weeks. But the spring bolt, she smiled faintly. Made it unnecessary. I hid in the window alcove when Geoffrey left the door ajar. Eleanor closed it. I stepped out, struck once, returned to the alcove. The bolt engaged itself. I waited until the scream cylinder played, then slipped out with the others. Poirot leaned forward. And Dr. Thorne? Greedier than I. He demanded half the estate. I poisoned the cocoa, cyanide in the sugar basin. He took 2 lumps. The apple was insurance. He ate it in panic. Poirot's voice hardened. You burned the convent. Records that would prove my maternity? A hired man in Bruges? Silence stretched, broken only by the fire's collapse. Poirot stood. You planned every detail, madame, but you forgot one thing. He opened the desk drawer. Inside, a dictaphone cylinder, new. Your confession, recorded from the moment you entered. Mrs. Caldwell lunged for the dagger. Poirot was faster. He caught her wrist. The door burst open. Japp, Hastings, 2 constables. She fought like a tiger, but the keys scattered, the duplicate library key skittering across the rug. Japp snapped on cuffs. Beatrice Caldwell, I arrest you for the murders of Lady Eleanor Hargrove and Dr. Elias Thorne. She laughed, wild, broken. Veritas, Monsieur Poirot. Truth, my truth. Later, in the morning room, Poirot addressed the stunned survivors. Mrs. Caldwell acted alone. The birth certificate, Veritas Thorne, was hers, altered by Eleanor to protect the Hargrove name. The convent fire destroyed the original parish register. The 10,000 transfer, Mrs. Caldwell's escape fund, routed through Thorne's account. Sir Reginald sank into a chair. The ledgers, she had them all along. Victoria wept silently. Geoffrey stared at the floor. Poirot turned to the window. Dawn was breaking, rose and gold. Justice, he said quietly, is rarely tidy, but the little grey cells, they do not lie. Chapter 7. Justice Served. Mrs. Beatrice Caldwell stood in the entrance hall, wrists cuffed, bombazine torn at the shoulder, where Japp had gripped her. The chandelier above, now blazing with electric light, turned the scattered keys on the parquet into tiny mirrors. Each key reflected a different face. Sir Reginald's shock, Victoria's tear-streaked mascara, Geoffrey's hollow stare, Colonel Fitzroy's rigid salute to duty. Hastings guarded the front door. 2 constables flanked the prisoner. Poirot, immaculate in dove grey, stood at the foot of the staircase like a conductor awaiting the final chord. Japp cleared his throat. Beatrice Caldwell, you will be taken to Devizes jail to await trial at the next assizes. Murder of Lady Eleanor Hargrove, murder of Dr. Elias Thorne, arson in Bruges, conspiracy, theft. Mrs. Caldwell lifted her chin. Add love to the charge sheet, Inspector. Love twisted into a noose. Poirot inclined his head. Love, madame, is no defense in the Old Bailey. But let us complete the ledger. He turned to the survivors. Sir Reginald, your embezzlement ends here. The missing $47,000 will be repaid from your personal accounts. Scotland Yard has the forged receipts. Reginald opened his mouth, closed it, nodded once. Miss Langford, the gramophone cylinder and forged suicide note were your voice and your stationery, but Mrs. Caldwell's direction. You will give evidence. In return, no charge of accessory. Victoria whispered, Thank you. Colonel Fitzroy, the ladder, the blood, the cufflink, diversions. Your war record remains unsullied. The colonel's scar twitched. Understood. Mr. Jeffrey, the nail in your shoe, the open door, innocent actions weaponized. Seek help for the gambling. The estate will fund it. Jeffrey managed a broken, Yes, sir. Poirot faced Mrs. Caldwell once more. Your confession is recorded, witnessed, signed. Yet one detail remains. He produced the sealed document she had taken from the safe, yellowed red wax intact. Lord Hargrove's true will, 1900. Read it aloud. Mrs. Caldwell's voice, though hoarse, rang clear. I, Edmund Hargrove, being of sound mind, bequeath the entirety of Shadowbrook Manor and its income to my natural son, Veritas Caldwell, born 14th March 1900, to Beatrice Caldwell, housekeeper. Should he predecease me, the estate passes to charity. My wife, Eleanor, is granted life tenancy only. Gasps rippled. Poirot continued. Dr. Thorne was decoy. You altered the birth certificate years ago to name him, protecting your son's identity. When Eleanor planned to reveal both secrets, you killed her to preserve the inheritance for the boy, who died of fever in 1918 unknown to her. Mrs. Caldwell's knees buckled. He was mine. She stole him, then mourned a lie. Poirot's tone softened. You murdered for a ghost. A Black Maria waited, engine ticking. Japp assisted Mrs. Caldwell inside. As the door closed, she looked back at the manor, once her prison, now her scaffold. Tell them, she said to Poirot. I kept the keys to every heart in this house. The van rolled down the lime avenue, swallowed by morning mist. Poirot supervised the sealing of evidence. Hastings watched, somber. Will she hang Poirot? Almost certainly. The Crown versus Caldwell, open and shut. Poirot paused at the desk, running a gloved finger over the bloodstain, now faint. Yet justice is never clean, mon ami. A mother avenged a stolen child with 2 lives and a lifetime of silence. The survivors gathered for coffee. Real coffee, not cocoa. Sir Reginald poured with shaking hands. Victoria lit a cigarette, inhaled, exhaled a perfect ring. Geoffrey stared at the revised will, now public. Everything to charity, he said dully. We're penniless. Colonel Fitzroy raised his cup. To absent friends, and to truth, however late. Poirot entered, hat in hand. Madame Caldwell's personal effects are boxed. Among them, a locket with a curl of baby hair, labeled VC 1900. He placed it on the table. Victoria touched it, tears falling. She kept him close, even in servitude. The London Express steamed in. Poirot and Hastings boarded first class. As the train pulled away, Shadowbrook shrank to a child's toy beneath the downs. Hastings gazed out. Another case closed. Poirot polished his moustache with a silk handkerchief. Closed, yes. But the whispers linger. Veritas, truth, rarely sets us free. It only changes the cage. He opened Le Figaro, but his eyes were on the receding manor. Somewhere, a key turned in a lock that would never open again. Epilogue. Scotland Yard, 1 month later. Japp's report, clipped to the file. Beatrice Caldwell, 57, convicted on all counts. Sentence, death. Appeal denied. Executed, 14th March 1926. Her son's would-be 26th birthday. Shadowbrook sold to the National Trust. Poirot's fee, 1 dozen crates of Chateau d'Yquem, 1918. Chapter 8. Unraveling Threads. Shadowbrook stood boarded, windows blindfolded with plywood, the National Trust sign swinging in the wind. Inside, dust sheets draped the furniture like funeral palls. Poirot had returned, officially to retrieve a forgotten walking stick, unofficially because a letter had arrived at Baker Street, postmarked Shadowbrook, Wilts. No sender. Only a brass key taped to heavy cream paper and 4 words in spidery ink. The truth is unfinished. Poirot's moustache bristled. In Nachevet, someone plays with the maestro. Old Mr. Gibbs, the trust's caretaker, let Poirot in with a lantern and a grumble. Place is cursed, sir. Footsteps at night, doors opening themselves. I sleep in the gatehouse now. Poirot patted the man's shoulder. Curses are merely puzzles with poor manners. He dismissed Gibbs, locked the front door behind him, and stood alone in the entrance hall. Moonlight filtered through a cracked board, striping the checkered floor. He listened. Tick, tick. The grandfather clock, stopped at 11:47 since the murder, ticked once. Poirot smiled. Bon, the game resumes. The library door hung ajar. The police tape had long rotted. Poirot entered, lantern low. The bloodstain was a faint bruise on the parquet. The safe yawned open, empty. But on the desk lay a fresh sheet of cream paper, the same as Lady Eleanor's last note. Ink still wet. You buried the wrong secret. Look beneath the hearth. Poirot knelt, rolled back the rug, and pried up the hearthstone with his penknife. Beneath, a tin box, rusted, locked. The brass key fit. Inside, a child's exercise book, cover labeled Veritas Caldwell, age 8. Pages filled with drawings, stick figures labeled Mama B, Papa E, a house with a red door. Last page, a crude map of the manor, an X in the wine cellar. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Encore un enfant. Stone steps spiraled down, air cold and sharp with tannins. Cobwebs brushed Poirot's hat like bleeding fingers. At the X, beneath a rack of 1890 port, lay a loose flagstone. He lifted it. A second tin. Inside, a reel of recording wire and a photograph. The photo, Mrs. Caldwell, young, smiling, holding a toddler. On the back, Veritas and Mama, 1903. The boy's eyes, Poirot froze. Dr. Thorne's eyes. But the dates. Poirot wound the wire onto his pocket phonograph. A child's voice, trembling. Papa said, if I'm good, he'll come back. Mama B says, never. Who do I believe? Static. Then Mrs. Caldwell whispering, believe me, darling. Always me. Poirot returned to the library, wire reel in hand. He placed it on the gramophone, still in the long gallery, and cranked. The child's voice filled the house. Doors upstairs creaked open. Footsteps. Victoria Langford appeared on the landing, nightgown, candle, face ghostly. You, Poirot said calmly. She descended slowly. I never left. The trust let me catalogue the books. I knew there was more. Poirot held up the photograph. Veritas Caldwell, your half-brother. Mrs. Caldwell's son, not Thorne's. Thorne was the decoy, yes, but you... Victoria's candle trembled. I found the exercise book weeks ago, the map. I thought if the real Veritas was alive, the charity bequest could be challenged. I'd inherit. Poirot shook his head. Veritas died in 1918. Influenza. Mrs. Caldwell burned the convent to hide that, not her maternity, but the proof her son never lived to claim. Victoria sank into a chair. Then why the wire? The letter? Poirot rewound the reel. Beneath the child's voice, a second track, faint, adult. Victoria's voice dubbed over. The truth is unfinished. You forged the letter, Poirot said. Sent it to lure me back, hoping I'd find evidence to break the charity clause. But you underestimated the little grey cells. She laughed bitter. I just wanted what was mine. Poirot placed the exercise book in her hands. Take it. The trust will honor the boy's memory with a plaque. You will have nothing except the truth you already possess. Poirot stepped onto the terrace as the sun rose, gilding the roses. Behind him, Victoria wept over the childish drawings. He lit a cigarette, rare indulgence, and exhaled towards the sky. Finis, he murmured. The threads are unraveled, the tapestry complete. He left the brass key on the balustrade. Let the next caretaker lock the door. Chapter 9. The Grand Revelation. Poirot had come back again, this time without announcement. Second letter, delivered by hand to Baker Street. Attic. North gable. Bring light, not company. No signature, only a wax seal, a tiny fox's mask. He ascended the servant's stair alone, lantern swinging. The attic door, padlocked since the sale, was open, chain cut clean. Inside, trunks, moth-eaten, theatrical costumes, a child's rocking horse, frozen mid-gallop. Moonlight slanted through a dormer, illuminating a single object on the floorboards. A leather portmanteau, monogram G.H., Geoffrey Hargrove. Poirot knelt. The case was locked. The fox seal key fit. If you are reading this, I am either free or finished. The game was larger than Caldwell supposed. Follow the film. Poirot's breath clouded in the cold. Encore un fantôme? Downstairs, Poirot threaded the reel into the Trust's stored cine projector. The screen, once a bedsheet, flickered to life. Grainy images. The Rose Garden, 1924. Lady Eleanor, younger, laughing. Dr. Thorne, alive, handing her a baby wrapped in christening lace. Mrs. Caldwell in the background, face averted, arms empty. Cut to Geoffrey, drunk, arguing with Thorne beside the moat. Thorne. She'll change the will for my son, not yours. Geoffrey. There is no son. Veritas died in 18, you're the spare. Thorne laughs, produces the passport. Then I'll become him. Final frame. Geoffrey slipping a vial into Thorne's coat pocket. Cyanide crystals glinting. The film jammed, burned, ended in white. Poirot returned to the attic. Beneath the portmanteau lining, a second ledger. Mrs. Caldwell's kitchen accounts. Altered. Entries in Geoffrey's hand. Poison, tooth unsixed. Film 5 Swiss transfer, $200 monthly. A margin note, insurance. If BC swings, I vanish, as V.T. Poirot exhaled. Le voilà. Geoffrey orchestrated the orchestra. Mrs. Caldwell was first violin, Thorne the cymbal crash, Victoria the smoke machine. Poirot descended to the wine cellar. Behind the 1890 port rack, another loose stone. Inside, a suitcase, modern, labeled V. Thorne. Dawn. The Trust's new curator, Miss Langley, found Poirot in the library. Mr. Hargrove was seen boarding the RMS Aquitania yesterday, under the name Vincent Thorne. Poirot nodded. Wire Southampton. Detain on arrival. Too late. A telegram waited. Passenger Vogue. Thorne disembarked Cherbourg. Proceeded unknown. Poirot crushed the paper. Sacre, the fox escapes the trap. Back in the attic, Poirot found one last item taped beneath the rocking horse. A child's drawing. Mama B in black, Papa G in boat, me in the middle, scrawled beneath. I kept the real secret. Love, Veritas. Poirot understood. Geoffrey was Veritas. Survived influenza. hidden by Mrs. Caldwell, raised as Geoffrey to protect the inheritance. The boy in the convent fire, a paid orphan, truth layered like onion skin. Spring 1928. The National Trust added a second plaque beneath the first, and to Geoffrey Hargrove, alias Veritas Caldwell, 1900, who chose freedom over fortune. May the sea keep his secrets. Poirot, reading the inscription in the Times, allowed himself a rare smile. He wired Buenos Aires police, routine inquiry. No reply ever came. In Baker Street, he filed the case under inachevé. Some truths, he decided, are better drowned. Chapter 10. Echoes of Justice. The sun rose red over the Rio de la Plata, gilding the masts of steamers and the white suits of dockhands. Hercule Poirot, traveling incognito as Monsieur Henri Poiret, Belgian importer of lace, stood beneath a canvas awning, Panama hat tilted, eyes fixed on the customs shed. A cable from Southampton had confirmed Vincent Thorne disembarked Cherbourg, reboarded under the same name at Lisbon, arrived Buenos Aires yesterday. Poirot's moustache twitched with satisfaction. He watched a tall Englishman in a cream suit, Geoffrey Hargrove, alias Veritas Caldwell, clear customs with a forged passport and a crocodile leather valise. Geoffrey scanned the crowd, then hailed a taxi. Poirot followed in a battered Ford. Driver paid in crisp pounds. Geoffrey took a table beneath a jacaranda tree, ordered café con leche, and opened a newspaper, La Nation. Poirot sat 3 tables away, behind Le Figaro. A woman approached Geoffrey, tall, dark, veiled. She slipped him a small parcel wrapped in brown paper. He paid, tucked it inside his jacket, and left. Poirot paid his own bill and followed the woman. She entered a pension on Calle San Martin. The sign read, Casa Veritas. Poirot's pulse quickened. He waited until dusk, then bribed the concierge with a gold sovereign. Room 12, registered to Senior Victoria Langford, widow. Poirot knocked. Victoria opened, veil lifted, eyes wide. Monsieur Poirot. Oui, mademoiselle. The chase ends here. Inside, Geoffrey, frozen, parcel open on the bed. 40,000 ols, in mixed currencies. The motion picture reel, the child's drawing. Victoria's voice trembled. I followed him. The money was ours, half for each sibling. Mrs. Caldwell's last letter promised it. Geoffrey laughed, bitter. She lied to the end. The money is mine, Veritas's birthright. Poirot produced handcuffs. Argentine police issue, loaned by a cooperative commissario. Geoffrey Hargrove, alias Veritas Caldwell. You are under arrest for conspiracy to defraud, forgery, and accessory to murder. Geoffrey lunged for the window. Poirot tripped him with his cane. Victoria screamed as constables burst in. Interrogation room, ceiling fan lazy. Geoffrey defiant. Mrs. Caldwell acted alone. I merely survived. Poirot laid out the evidence. British Embassy, 2 days later. Extradition papers signed. Geoffrey and Victoria boarded the SS Arlanza under guard, bound for Southampton. Poirot declined to travel. At the gangplank, Geoffrey turned. You'll never prove intent, Poirot. Reasonable doubt. Poirot smiled. In England, mens rea is Latin for hanged by the neck. The ship sailed at sunset. Poirot watched from the dock until the lights were only stars. The manor, now a museum, open to the public. Poirot attended incognito. In the library, a new display case to Veritas Caldwell, 1900, who lived many lives and died in none. Let truth be the only inheritance. Poirot laid a single white rose beneath it. Hastings burst in, newspaper aloft. Geoffrey hanged yesterday. Victoria got 10 years. Accessory. Poirot sipped chocolate. Ainsi va le monde. On his desk, an anonymous parcel, postmarked Buenos Aires. Inside, the crocodile valise's brass lock, engraved VC, and a note in Jeffrey's hand. You win, little man. The sea kept nothing after all. Poirot locked it in a drawer marked Resolute. He never opened it again. Autumn 1930. Poirot cruised the Thames on a pleasure steamer, Hastings at his side. Big Ben chimed 4. Hastings mused, whatever happened to the $40,000? Poirot watched Gull's wheel. Donated anonymously to the Foundling Hospital, London. Veritas's true inheritance. Children who will never know their parents' names. He raised a glass of eau de vie. To echoes, he toasted.